Coming to get you, Barbara.
The Fear Central Radio Show. Warning, our content may include spoilers and is intended for mature audiences.
Hey, fellow horror fans, welcome to the Fear Central Radio Show. I am your host, Mike, and we've got a huge crowd here this week for everybody, as Heather mimics me. So we'll start with her.
Hi.
Chris. Shaylin.
Ashlyn.
Katie.
Paul.
Marley. That's a new name to this crowd.
That is a new name.
And
Well,
this one back
run,
here,
Marley,
does she want to be
run.
here too?
I was trying Brittany.
Brittany's got a scoot up.
Yeah, we've got Brittany here too.
I was trying to think of like
So, and then
the way
we've got our
Bob
live
Marley would
audience
say it.
of
Yes.
Shane and Krista, but you probably won't hear much of them because they're both on electronic devices.
Yeah. they're monitoring the Fear Central social media for
There
us.
you
They're-
go.
We should actually get that set up.
yeah.
So we weren't here last week, but that was because we just were having way too much fun watching tornadoes with sharks in them.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Laser chainsaws.
Tons.
Props and everything.
Yes.
And like so many Tara Reeds.
Yeah, 15 of them, like in the last
Saberbots.
movie or
And
something.
not one of them could emote.
No, not one. No. So this week
She
we
got
are
better as the Botox wore off.
I think she got drunker too.
Yeah. So this week we are actually going to be giving you a multiple-parted show. So this week we are starting one part of it, and we will continue next week, and if need be, maybe one more week after that. Depends on how much we get accomplished. But we've talked about phobias, we've talked about superstitions, and we've talked about urban legends. So this week we're going to bring you something that can be quite scary in itself in the real world. We're going to be talking about cults for the next couple of shows or so. Our resident historian, Katie, wrote like a 68-page book or something for all this.
5,670 words.
Yeah.
Was
It's
that
a
after
tome.
the highlighting?
How long did it take?
16 hours. I started at 9 o'clock last night.
16 hours of research.
Yeah.
So primarily she will probably be running this show since she is the expert on this.
Not quite.
This is
but
kind of like the outline for the book I think she's going to write.
She's done a lot more research than we have.
Yes. Because when I looked, she said, I sent everybody the notes, so I opened it up, and then when she showed up tonight, I said, do you have a Cliff Notes version? So this week we are talking
about national and international cults.
Okay.
Most of them are big names that you know, and
Okay.
also topical ones. So,
Are we talking about Jehovah's Witness too?
No.
Same thing.
Just wondering.
But some have classified that as a
Some
cult.
have.
It is
Some
a
have.
cult. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
What?
The one thing
pretty
about
sure it's
Jehovah's
called-
Witnesses I don't understand is that they keep trying to convert everybody, but there's only a certain, they say in the religion, there's only a certain amount that get to go to heaven.
144,000.
So why would you want to recruit all these extra people if you're not sure you're going to get to go
Well,
in?
you gotta book it
You
up.
know what I mean? It's like,
I don't
Well,
want to.
pre-booking. What
I
happens
don't want to
if
join
the
them
It's a hope
because
thing.
I don't want to
Like-
join them because I
Yeah,
enjoy
because
driving.
They also believe that it's not getting saved; it's that God has selected those people, the 144,000, and those are the ones that get to heaven, whether you are a Jehovah's Witness or Christian or not. You could also be an atheist and still go to heaven if you're part of that number.
Okay.
So the whole idea is to make their experience better by gathering them into the fold.
Right.
So to
Now, is it them or is it the Latter-day Saints that walk everywhere? They don't drive.
Actually, both
That's
of
both.
them.
I was
Both
going
of
to say,
them.
I wouldn't join just because I like driving.
Actually, Latter-day Saints tend to use bicycles
Yes.
now. So,
So I like Freddie Mercury.
yes.
Bicycle. Bicycle. Okay. So
Who wants to ride my bicycle?
we're all familiar with this first one. Pretty
Absolutely.
much. I would hope everybody should know something about this.
These are terrifying images that most of us had seen at one point or another. There are about a bajillion different documentaries about Jim Jones and the People's Temple. So that's where we're going to start.
All right.
Alrighty. So the People's Temple was actually originally an independent congregation created by Jim Jones in 1955, originally called Wings of Deliverance.
Deliverance. I hear banjos.
Pedal fast.
Wings, terrifying.
Wings.
Right.
That was a crazy show.
The entire idea of it was to preach about hope for a utopian society that had gotten rid of racism and poverty. So it was a hope message and targeted particularly the hopeless parts of society.
The disenfranchised.
The disenfranchised, like African Americans, and especially in urban centers, and people in poverty. So, which is also a double whammy at times. So, yeah. So they were initially independent, and then Jim Jones decided that he wanted to be ordained so that they could be recognized by the federal government. So they became
as an authentic religion.
Yes, as an authentic religion. So they affiliated themselves with the Disciples of Christ. Used to be called the Christian Church, but they've gone back and forth between the names over the years.
Right.
And in 1964, he was ordained. In 1965, he started warning of a coming nuclear holocaust and believed that the people needed to join the utopian society and that those select few would survive and repopulate the world, but only the good who lived communally like Christ intended. So that was they got a lot of political backlash because they were politically involved, heavily politically involved. They worked with movements, they worked in campaigns, and they got a lot of backlash in Indianapolis. So they decided to pick up and move to Ukiah, California. So in 1977, People's Temple was accused of financial fraud, physical mistreatment of members, and abuse of children in their care. And so Jones led all of his people in the hundreds to Guyana to start a utopian society.
Just for people that hadn't caught up with the numbers, that means that was in operation for 12 years before those accusations came around.
Correct. Yeah. Now, it really seems that whenever you look at Jim Jones, that he believed what he said, and his message was whole and good when he began talking about loving people no matter their race and to eliminate poverty, eliminate suffering. It all sounds great,
especially in a time of this, like civil rights activism.
Exactly,
because that was a lot. That was a big thing throughout the 60s. And into the 70s.
Yes. Well, they started in the 50s in the midst of the Montgomery bus boycott.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there we go. So,
say that 5 times fast.
Right.
Montgomery Ward.
Montgomery Ward.
We're going down to Electric Avenue?
Oh my god, yeah, wasn't that thing called that?
We're going to walk on through Montgomery Boys.
Okay. So, now, let's focus specifically, before we get into what happened with the People's Temple.
We're going to get into that.
Yeah, we'll get
before
there.
we get into it.
We're going to talk about Jim Jones himself.
Oh.
So he was born in 1931,
right,
in rural Indiana,
okay,
and in a shack with no plumbing. He was in an impoverished home. His father was a Ku Klux Klan member, and
there's a shocker.
And at one point, his parents refused to allow his black friend to come into their home. Yeah. So now he was interested in religion. Totally, he read Mao, Hitler. He read Marx. He read Lenin. All of those theorists he read as a young boy. And he internalized it, and that's how he created his ideology.
Yeah, I would think there's something going on if a 10-year-old's like, "Ma, can you buy me a Mein Kampf?"
Right.
Especially you got a racist dad that's in the KKK. He's
Yeah.
like,
Right.
okay, well, I'm going to sit here and read Mao.
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah.
I love this book.
So, Jim Jones himself, though, was known for his passionate message and his intoxicating personal charisma. People said that even if they didn't believe what he was saying, they found themselves being pulled into every word he said and just wrapped up into it. It was a truly mystical type of experience to be in the presence of Jim Jones.
It's kind of that's a commonality you hear with a lot of cults. I mean, you get to people like Manson and everything. It's always they talk about being just kind of hypnotic trance.
Absolutely.
Well, most of the ones
Yeah.
we'll probably talk about have a kind of charisma that just make people go, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
I
the other
get it.
part is that most of the time, the leaders of these cults have studied, like, human behavior, and they know how to manipulate those that they deem weaker than themselves. You got somebody who's, being racially, persecuted, and you have him come in and say, "Hey, that's not right. We're gonna, we're gonna change all of this." And
He was inspiring for people who
Yeah.
were looking
Oh,
for
yeah.
hope. So
especially in the 60s when there was such a counterculture movement.
right.
You
But
know?
a lot of those people didn't have access to it. So have someone come to their area and suddenly give them access to that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the issues we had almost from the beginning with Jones was that he felt a personal inadequacy in an extreme way. And so he insisted early on that all of his disciples call him father, or a derivation of father, as a way to show his superiority over them. He did many different things to justify it, and he embellished every miracle he ever did, so that he seemed like a godlike character.
Right.
So, and that legitimized him in his mind. He also consistently demoralized his followers, even making them strip naked in the front of a full meeting and criticizing their body in front of the congregation, in extreme ways, and making them feel horrible. And if any of us know, especially growing up in America, that your body image is a big deal for you. And it wasn't just men that he had stripped down, it was women too. And women's self-worth is often very wrapped up in that self-image, which he destroyed. So he was looking for that. He was looking for a way to crush people, to make them depend on him for that compliment that would feed them to the next day.
Which really kind of sounds odd because it's almost a 180 from what he's trying to preach.
Right.
Really?
Because, he's like, oh, everybody's equal and everybody's this and everybody's that, but you're going to do this for me.
Very hypocritical.
Absolutely. So, also, before we get into the atrocity that was Jonestown, we'll also talk about the key beliefs, specifically of the movement. So, they believed in the ideal of a just society that would overcome racism and poverty. But they had to make that utopia happen, which is why they moved to Guyana. So, they had their entire theology is different because it was always being revised, and it was, from what they could tell, is that it was a mix of social concerns with faith healing and an enthusiastic worship style drawn from the African American church tradition. Okay. So not only you have this magnetic figure at the front, but you also have him preaching about a utopia that sounds amazing and everything you ever dreamed of, and he's getting you amped and
really excited about everything that's being said, and that generates hardcore followers.
Oh yeah.
So
Until you stand in front of the congregation naked, and then
Right. Well,
No,
even then,
who?
they're made to believe that it was good for him to criticize them because it shows them their faults that they can work on.
so
yeah, plastic surgery is not really a cult thing. Oh, well, I mean, you have addicts, but
Have you ever watched the show Botched?
I
Come on.
did. Yes.
But by this time, he's already really kind of brainwashed you into this is the belief, this is how
They
things
ain't
work.
enough Kool-Aid.
But the other,
So as a child that was interested in religion, you say that I mean the authors he's reading, a lot of these authors will tell you how to exploit religion to get what you want out of
That is actually
population.
one of the things he talked about. Later on, he began to espouse this idea that socialism was the cure or enlightenment from the opiate of religion.
Oh.
And that one had to become socialist in order to kill religion and become a utopian society.
I think he was drinking his own Kool-Aid.
He was actually had a very heavy drug problem
I
at
was
this
going to
point.
say, yeah.
But yeah,
One thing I found really interesting in reading up on them is that it wasn't just his faked miracles, like the healings, and it wasn't just his sermons. They actually changed the words of hymns to suit him.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
instead of like, oh, the blood of Jesus, they changed it, oh, the blood of Jesus, from, oh, the word of Jesus, it cleanses white as snow. But instead of white as snow, they changed it to black and glow.
interesting.
So it was more of changing it to suit what his
He was-
beliefs were.
right.
Which, I mean,
Well, but that's in any cult. Any cult, they take from different other religions and manipulate it and word it
oh yeah, they
differently.
take,
Absolutely.
they take,
Make it sound okay and make it sound plausible.
you know, they take their Bible, whatever that may be, the
Right.
you know, Quran or the Holy Bible, you know, the different religious text, and they twist it and they pervert it to their own views,
Right.
You know, so, and that is that way with, I mean, not even just cults, but that's the kind of the organized religion now does that,
Right.
You know, so
Right. Okay, so a couple other major ones before we get into what I call the ultimate fate of the cult.
ultimate fate.
The ultimate
Right.
fate.
Dun, dun, dun.
So they also believed that family connections needed to be broken down, and that they should be related to him. And he was the one that arranged any marriages, but he also insisted that everyone in his following were celibate.
Yeah.
So
Which is kind of odd for most of the other ones. They're all because you're under me and you worship what I say. All your women are mine.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. He also never followed that, though. He had multiple affairs with men and women all throughout his time, and and
Mel Brooks says it's good to be the king.
he actually believed that all men were gay and all women were lesbian. That he was the only true heterosexual,
Okay.
and that's what he preached.
Okay.
Even though, you know, having a gay relationship is not heterosexual, but
Right.
Different.
interesting. Anyway,
He was full
very-
on Roman.
right?
Just saying.
They also had a intense suppression of individuality.
Yeah.
So people would shave their hair. They would wear specific clothes. They were only allowed. They were not allowed to have any worldly possessions that they brought to Guyana, and that it broke them even further. And we're talking about people that have been broken down over and over again.
Yeah.
Minorities that have been marginalized.
Marginalized and then further destroyed by Jim
We
Jones.
accept all of you. You're not a person. Come on.
Right.
Okay,
You don't
so-
need anything. Just this is what we're giving you right
You-
here on
you
the
can-
tray.
You can kind of see that he did a lot of reading on stuff when he
Absolutely.
was younger, because some of this you could pick out a little bit of Buddhism and a little Christianity, and so
Yep.
So in
Put
the
them all in a blender, and what do you get? Jim Jones.
right. In the
Okay.
late 1970s, Jones preached and declared that he was the reincarnation of Gandhi, Father Divine, Jesus, Gautama Buddha, and Vladimir Lenin.
Oh,
Yep.
Buddha and Jesus are the same person.
Right.
Neat.
So he believed that he was all of religion and yet none at the same time, because he was like the fulfillment of. Does that make sense?
That was the drugs talking.
Yeah. Oh, yes. At this time, he
Maybe.
had
Maybe
a
just a little.
a really severe addiction to Valium, Quaalude, stimulants, LSD, and barbiturates, which he took all together ritually on a daily basis.
Can't space them out. I got to do them all at once.
Right?
Go big
Call
or
it
go
their
home.
vision cocktail.
Yeah.
So the last belief before we move on to the interesting stuff, after arriving in Jonestown,
Yep.
Jim Jones started talking about the idea of translation, which was that all of his followers would die together and that they would move to another planet and live in bliss.
Okay, so he was the other planet one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. He believed firmly that that was the only way they were going to make a utopian society happen. And after, after that, we start getting his crazier stuff toward the end
Right.
of Jonestown. We'll get to in a minute.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's the Kool-Aid and the drugs talking.
Yes, yes.
Just-
Oh yeah.
So, Jonestown was initially an agricultural commune. And
Right.
that was the entire idea. So
Yeah.
not only were religious people brought there, but people who believed in the communist experiment came there. So you had lots of families that had no religious ties to Jim Jones
Right.
were there just so they could be part of that experiment. And
Right.
Hey, did you see that old man Jim? Yeah, he's got that agriculture. Let's go out there and hang out.
Hey, you got
Don't drink that Kool-Aid, though. You know what happened.
you got some watermelon?
No, I'm not interested in that ultimate paradise. What I want to do is grow some corn.
Yep.
I need a watermelon.
So immediately after Jones got to Jonestown with his several hundred, it ended up being 909 people in the end. Once he got all of them there, he closed the borders of Jonestown and refused to let anyone leave. So,
Oh, well, you know.
yes. So now we
I'm sure he just wanted what was best for them.
right.
But I
Absolutely.
have
What was
Jonestown
best for
immunity.
him, not
Right.
them.
I have
I'm sorry,
Jonestown
I
immunity.
misspoke.
Yes. Come on, Paul. Get with it.
But a lot of people have started to argue that Jones actually started losing his control over his movement as soon as he got to Guyana, for two reasons. First, that he was no longer needed for the stateside recruitment, so
Right.
he was essentially cut out of all of that.
Yeah.
Oh, darn.
And that's an entire population that he no longer has control over.
Exactly.
And so that was a big blow to him personally. And then whenever he got to Jonestown, he couldn't hide his addiction anymore. And it became public knowledge that he had
Yeah.
a severe drug addiction. So people, that the hold on them started to break.
I mean, when you put your entire population in a place where you're pretty much blocked in, it's going to get around.
Right, absolutely.
People begin to
Didn't he
go
do like a
dig into
broadcast?
their own investigation.
Yeah, he did lots of tapes where he talked about things, and he just spirals over time. Like in his last one, which they call the death tape, is just slurring speech, and nothing makes sense. And you hear children screaming in the background, and it's really horrible.
And in that tape, which I've actually listened to,
I have too.
You can hear some. I don't know exactly who she was, but she's like, "Mothers, take your children and calm them. This is what we have to do." But can you imagine having to take your child
And kill them?
and murder them?
Yeah.
And I don't
Happened
mean
to me one
just
time.
like somebody else is doing this to your children. These families were forced to do this to their own children.
Right.
I'm sorry, but you can shoot me dead, but
And
I'm not.
They actually had adopted lots of kids from the States because they believed that they were saving them by bringing
Right.
them into the utopian society.
Right.
So they had, earlier I noted that it was children in their care that they were neglecting. So a lot of these were children that the community had adopted and had no specific mothers and fathers.
that were being murdered by their caretakers.
Golly, man.
So, yeah. So, okay, so I'm trying to find out where I was. Okay, so
You're right there.
after getting to Jonestown and closing the borders, and as he started to spiral down, he started doing what were called White Nights, which were essentially trial runs for the what he called revolutionary suicide, which is where they all drank the Kool-Aid and then died. And the first time they did it, they didn't know what was going on, and then they told them that they had drinking poison, and a couple people yelled and jumped up, and they were immediately taken out and executed. So it was awful, but the people, they did these night after night, and it to the point that people didn't care what the flavor aid was, whether the flavor aid was poison, and they had no ability to understand if it was. Like they were gone.
Didn't he also start diminishing food and drink prior to that, so that they would be thirsty enough to go, give me whatever Kool-Aid you got?
Yes, he did. So after all of this began to happen, there was a leak by former members that had defected from Jonestown, coming to Congressman Leo Ryan, asking him to investigate the entire commune based on human rights abuses, etc.
From family members.
Yes, family members of the people
who were in the temple.
Right, and then there's the defected members as well. Right,
just making sure I was on the same page.
Yes. So, Leo Ryan decided to make a fact-finding trip to Jonestown. Initially, he was received very well, and they had a reception. But very quickly, he started to find out that there were people who needed and wanted to leave Jonestown.
It said that one of the
Sorry, we got baby Cujo on the prowl here.
Golly.
I'm fixing to put your butt outside, dude. That one of the temple members slipped Congressman Ryan a note.
Yes.
Saying that
they did.
Several of them wanted to leave.
Yes.
So
Ryan decided he was going to try to leave quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were getting out, or as they're about to leave, a guy named Don Sly came out and attacked Leo with a knife. But he was unsuccessful and was wrestled to the ground. But we believe this is about the point that Jim Jones decided that he wasn't going to let these people leave. Because all of these people and the 15 defectors got on a truck and rode down to the airstrip. And while at the airstrip, they were gunned down by a couple members of the People's Temple. Ryan himself was shot 20 times in the chest and abdomen.
Yeah.
He died almost immediately. There were several others that were injured, and then the people who had shot at them packed up the car that they were in and went back to the compound and left the injured there, and most of them died.
Mm-hmm. For anyone that doesn't know this story or this part of the story, this is insane to actually listen to the account, because there's like a car chase to the airport and all this stuff.
There's like 2 planes involved. That's a little. It gets a little dicey if you don't have like written things down and like be able to show things. So anyway, so couple were injured and several eventually died. And the pilot that was planned to take them, but was actually one of the gunmen, took the plane and took it to Georgetown like they had gone. So they couldn't figure out whether they had gone or not. So there was a lot of back and forth. But this gave time for them to get back to Jonestown, and Jones called the members to commit what he called revolutionary suicide, which would allow them to ascend to a new planet and achieve utopia. mothers and children were the first to take the poison. Mothers often used syringes without a needle to squirt the cyanide-laced Kool-Aid into the back of their children's mouths to force them to drink it.
And
other children ran away and were chased down. And in the death tape, you can actually hear them screaming as they ran away. And they were forced to drink. And others were actually injected with cyanide directly.
Yeah.
there was a total of 303 children, 17 and younger, plus one more. His name was Derek Dawson. He was an adopted Guyanese boy. And there was... The total is 304.
Of children, yes.
Children. 150 were 10 or younger. 190 were 12 or younger. And then 304 that were 17 and under.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? And what I understand about like the poison that they drank, it was not
easy.
It was not an easy thing.
Cyanide is not pleasant.
These are we're talking.
That's why Hitler refused to use it.
No,
and
convulsions
seizures and foaming at the mouth.
Yeah.
And it is not an. Can you imagine standing there and watching over 300 children spasming and convulsing and foaming at the mouth? And I don't.
Yeah, because the general populace of how this happened is they all drank at the same time, and they were all laying down next to each other, and they all went at the same time.
Oh, and that is not at all.
Nope. They went in rows. Okay. So...
Just hit him
there were total 909 people who died, which is a ridiculous amount, and that's probably why it sticks in people's minds as one of the scariest episodes.
Right.
Prior to 2001, it was the largest attack on loss of human life, loss of U.S. human life.
Right.
So it was chained. So that's a lot of people, and. The person of Jim Jones is frightening as well, that someone can become that and be born like that, to have that charisma and learn to develop it.
Right. So just to kind of give you an inclination of what this kind of stuff is like, if you're not very familiar with how cults work and stuff, if you've ever seen the TV show The Following with Kevin Bacon, that gives you a really good idea of the types of people that can be drawn into a person's charisma and manipulated into doing things that they normally wouldn't do.
The microcosm is I think a little bit better examined in The Mist.
Yeah.
Because you just see it as on an intimate level.
Right.
You know, hardship breeds fear.
All right, so are we ready to move on to the next one?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, wait, hold on.
Okay.
The one thing that's I've seen in several different documentaries, and I've read it, is it wasn't just the people at Jonestown. There was a small group that were outside of Jonestown, somewhere, I can't remember the name of where they were, and there was a mother and her children, and then they had just a friend with them. Well, they called and said, this is happening, we're going to do the suicide. Well, they didn't have any of the poison. So they said, do whatever you need to do. And she took a knife and she cut her kids' throats, except for the friend that was there. And she witnessed all of this. Can you imagine being in a strange country, being a teenager, watching someone you respect and love killing these babies? And she said, I tried to talk her out of it. I couldn't understand it. But and there were survivors. There were 13 who were part of a basketball team that was away participating in a tournament, and one of them was Jim Jones' son. See, Katie and I, we know a lot about cults. It's very interesting, because I guess from my point of view is I don't understand how people are led down that path. I mean, I march to the beat of my own drummer. I always have. And I don't need someone to point me in a direction to go. I go where I want to.
Right.
I kind of... maybe because I'm such a strong-willed person, that's not something that it's ever like been appealing to me. But I mean, I see how certain people react that way. You know, they don't have a strong family tie, or they're estranged from their families.
Right.
I mean, I can totally see where it's coming from, but I just
Going into any library or bookstore and see how many books they have that are just in the self-help section.
self-help books. Yes.
And
People are seekers, and especially in the 70s and 60s and 70s, people were searching for answers because they felt like their Christian church institutions had failed them.
they thought they kind of viewed it as kind of a mini age of enlightenment.
Right.
So.
Well, and I own one self-help book, and it's called How to Get Along with People You Can't Stand.
Okay.
Did you read that before meeting me?
No. Well, I've read that book about 12 times, mainly because I work in retail with the public.
Right.
And it's a hard thing to do.
Oh, yeah.
Paul is with the
Definitely.
public all the time, so he knows. So it's very hard to deal with some of these people. So, anyways,
Sometimes.
so what's next? Where are we going from here?
Well, we are going to work with the Heaven's Gate.
Moving on to Heaven's Gate.
Yes. So
That's a spacey ship.
yes, that is the spaceship cult.
Yes.
There were actually a lot of UFO cults forming in the 1970s.
Oh, yeah.
But
Lots of drugs.
theirs is really interesting. Actually, whenever they died, all of the people had Heaven's Gate away team armbands on their arms, saluting Star Trek.
Well, this was also about the time that we had, Carl Sagan with Cosmos and stating, yes, there most likely is
Right.
life out there. So,
And when you think about it, they are being told that the Christian beliefs that they're raised in, new scientific knowledge is contradicting everything they had once believed, and at that time, the system wasn't accepting and changing to fit the new information. So, I mean, you could still argue that it's a problem today, but at that time it was real bad, and so people were really looking for a way to incorporate all of that and to find a new way to express themselves in a spiritual way. They also
People like Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles.
correct. That would be the leaders. They have a pretty simple backstory, and they both have a pretty simple how it got started. So basically, Marshall Applewhite grew up in Texas. And was actually in Spur, Texas, out near Abilene, and to a Presbyterian minister. He had three siblings. Was very, very, very religious. He tried to go to seminary, but then decided to quit and move to New York City to try and fail to pursue a singing career.
New York City.
Yes.
Oh, so he was really pursuing that humbleness part of going to seminary school.
Yeah. So he had several teaching jobs between then and 1972 when he met Bonnie, but during that time his sexuality fluctuated between gay and straight, and he had multiple relationships with students whom he was teaching, and which obviously got him fired. So he was in a lot of turmoil and didn't know what was going on. So in 1972, he was in a hospital, not being treated, but in a hospital in which Bonnie Nettles was an RN. And they saw each other, and they said that their eyes met, and they immediately they immediately were able to share the esoteric secrets of the universe.
Hey, we could turn this into a show like How I Met Your Mother.
Why are you laughing? I mean, it was that way with us.
Yeah.
Their eyes met.
Right. So
Esoteric secrets of the universe. I mean, that's
right.
the foundation of any good relationship.
So Marshall Applewhite had previously been married but had already divorced.
I thought that was a healthy dose of fear.
Well, I mean, they kind of go hand
Well,
in
that
hand.
too, but
So
before we go any further, the word esoteric, for those who don't know that word, it means intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest.
So we were being esoteric when we called it esoteric.
Yes, very much so. But because I know that you hear that a word a lot when you're talking about cults and stuff.
Right,
so
right.
Having the definition of that word is probably a little important.
Right, right.
So anyways, moving on. Sorry.
Can you say esoteric, boys and girls? You could.
So he met Bonnie Nettles. Bonnie Nettles was born and raised in Houston in a Baptist family. She became an RN and married Joseph Siegel Nettles, whom she had 4 children with and was still married to when she met Applewhite.
Secrets of the universe trump that, I guess.
She moved Applewhite into her home with her husband and 4 children, which her husband promptly divorced her. But Applewhite and Nettles' relationship never was sexual. It was always they just called it a spiritual connection.
It was very esoteric.
It was weird. So, yeah. So, now Nettles, how he comes to be around is that in the early 1970s, she really became a seeker. And she believed that a monk called Brother Francis was speaking to her and giving her instructions in order to find God. She began conducting seances with mediums and studied astrology, theosophy, and the occult. Then in 1972, she began seeing multiple fortune tellers, with one telling her that she would meet a tall, mysterious man with light hair and a fair complexion, which Applewhite was. So,
good thing she didn't throw something about fruit in there.
Right. So I wrote it down. Theosophy, because that's a deal.
Theosophy.
Yes. Theosophy
Any
essentially
philosophies maintaining that a knowledge of God may be achieved through spiritual ecstasy, direct intuition, or special individual revelations.
I tried none of that spiritual ecstasy. Is it good?
So, basically, these 2 people who were also mentally unstable at the time and possibly delusional were together.
That sounds very judgmental.
Medical professionals recently have said that them reinforcing each other's delusions is what kept each of them from self-destructing. So
there you go.
While they
Positive
were
relationship.
While they were off the rails, it also kept them from exploding.
Positive reinforcement in this relationship.
Right.
I was going to kill myself, but you seem to believe my weirdness.
Right.
Sounds about right.
So in 1974, they cemented their beliefs and proclaimed that they believed themselves to be the 2 witnesses from Revelation who were martyred and then ascended to heaven. So in order to prepare the way for people. So this was their
second coming?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, so they saw Revelations as historical texts?
Yes.
Okay.
They included, in their stuff was included like lots of different religious texts, like all bound in together. So, and of course they picked pieces that they thought were good from each one, and that's how they ran with it. But, so that's how they did that.
Right.
The key beliefs of their group were that they believed that planet Earth was about to be recycled, wiped clean, renewed, refurbished, or rejuvenated, and the only chance to survive was to leave immediately with the Hale-Bopp comet via suicide.
Yes.
Now,
good old saving Hale-Bopp.
Right. So, no, the interesting thing is that they had never said this was going to be the case with the Hale-Bopp comet. Mm-hmm. They said that they would, their entire forms would ascend at some point, but it didn't happen. And
they never said physically.
Well, they said it would happen, but they didn't foresee it happening the way they ended up happening. They made it happen in the end. So, they did follow the Hale-Bopp comet. That was an addition brought by Applewhite after Nettles died in 1985 after a long battle with cancer beginning in her liver. She eventually had an eye removed and was horribly disfigured by the time they did it because they refused to treat her with modern medicine. So they just continued to let their surgeons, which were basically just people who had knives, cut off any growths that they saw.
Okay. Hey, you got a bite right there. Let me cut it off.
And the other part is when she died, the group didn't tell her children that she died.
Yeah, it was a couple years before they told her children that she had died.
Wow.
Yes, because
the children from the previous
marriage.
Her children.
Well, see, Bonnie had kept very close contact with her children. One of her children, a couple of her children, she had a very rocky relationship with. But her oldest daughter, she kept in contact with, and she didn't often write, but she would write, and would take pictures of her grandchildren and that kind of thing, even though she was not supposed to have those worldly possessions.
I couldn't even imagine what a cult like this starting out today with today's technology.
Yeah, I just.
That could be beyond scary.
Yeah, you think teachers want to take up cell phones?
Yeah. Excuse me, I need to take that from you.
Okay, so they claim to be against suicide, but they redefined suicide to be turning against the next level when it is being offered. So basically, all of the people on Earth who weren't going to ascend with the Hale-Bopp comet were committing suicide. They weren't committed suicide. Everybody else was. Yes.
If you're just going to
stay here on Earth, you're committing suicide.
Yes.
Correct.
Instead of ascending with us to life.
So their idea was that their ascension, was it like full body ascension or just spiritual ascension?
They said they wavered back and forth. It was never like they made themselves to be as human-less as possible, eschewing all characteristics of humanity so that they could be part of. Because originally they did believe that they would take their bodies. They would be like beamed up, like in Star Trek, but they would keep their bodies and use those in the next level. Things changed, obviously, as they got towards the end, and not a lot of their ideas, beliefs made sense anymore. They believe that part of the getting rid of humanity was to leave their old names behind and take new ones. Originally, they were a little more, creative, but they all did have whatever and then Odie added at the end.
Odie?
So O-D-Y. Like Cody minus the K.
It would be...
Or C.
That was the first two letters of their name plus Odie.
Yeah, well, so they started with that.
And peyote.
Smoke it.
And my Odie. And he Odie.
My Odie wants some peyote. No.
Crody.
But, okay, so towards
you're
the
so
end,
crody.
A sody.
But towards the end, they actually quit using the first letters because there got to be so many of them.
Hers actually makes more sense. She would be Shody.
Shody. It's your birthday.
There's a crowdy over there too.
Right. And they just started using their entire name plus Odie. Yeah. So it'd be like Michelle Odie or that's how they did the names. But that's when Applewhite really kind of quit.
You mean Applewhite Odie?
Applewhite, yeah.
I think Paul's name was the best.
Yes.
Peyote.
Yeah.
Palody.
Maybe it's Pouty.
I don't know.
So they believed that to be eligible for membership, they had to be able to shred their attachment to the planet, including all human-like characteristics. They believed in what they called the evolutionary level above human, which was physical and corporeal, and was another world in our universe. So it was a different planet that they were being taken to.
Were they nudists?
No, they wore like big. It's really
because that would attach me to the planet. Wearing clothes.
Well, they would wear big, almost like eunuch type things.
It was,
and
they were
Toga.
white.
They were all the same color. Yeah, so
And they were all baggy so that no one could see one's sexuality based
Right.
on.
Come with us and evolve into boring aliens.
Yeah. But you get a toga.
Not a party toga, though.
Oh.
No.
Well. Oh. Okay.
Okay, so they believe that
Not
God.
the Animal House cult.
Chad would be the leader.
How is it? Get it?
Oh God.
Yeah, actually that.
Yeah.
So they believe that God was actually a highly developed extraterrestrial.
So
Okay.
God was a giant
Basically, another being like humans. That
I'm not going to say it's God, but it's God.
Hey, I watch my Ancient Aliens. I know.
Yeah, that's the next thing. They believed in ancient astronauts.
Yes.
Which were aliens that came to Earth and
Yes.
created all the wonders of the world.
Uh-huh. I watched that show.
The ancient wonders of the world.
It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly, that one.
So
Especially crazy hair guy.
Prometheus promoted this doctrine.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying it's extraterrestrials,
No,
but
it's
it's
stressful.
extraterrestrials.
So these evil space aliens,
Yeah, they
Evil.
also they believed in evil space aliens called Luciferians.
which
Romulans.
sounds like bad fan fiction naming.
Yeah. They
They
were
changed their name to Romulans.
they represented themselves to Earthlings as God. As gods, and conspired to keep humans from developing. So essentially, God, as we know him in the Christian tradition, was a Luciferian because he attempted to keep us in the human tradition rather than helping us to get to the
Aspire
next
to
level.
alienness.
Yes.
You made us stop evolving.
Right.
I was going to be so boring. I was going to have the grayest toga.
I wanted to be the reptilian, but no, we have to stay human.
I didn't want this family, friends, sex, possessions, none of this stuff.
No, I didn't want it all.
Well, and the other part is they talked about being ancient astronauts.
Yeah, well,
And-
those were actual aliens that came to Earth and created the wonders of the world and facilitated humanity becoming humanity.
Which is why they all look like pyramids.
Well, and the one part of this is that we usually talk about movies and books and stuff. In Prometheus, that is one that when they go in Prometheus,
Right.
and they're looking for the ancient astronauts who created all of this
Which
stuff.
in that
just
film
kind
is
of ties-
considered the engineers.
Yes, the engineers. Yes,
But it's also laid part to a little bit in Aliens versus Predator when they find the temple buried
Yes.
miles under the ice.
Here's a really terrible one that applies to this as well. Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Crystal Skull.
Kingdom of the Crystal. Kingdom of the Crystal.
Whatever. I don't like that movie.
Don't
but-
be dissing on number 2 now. That's a temple.
Oh, I know that's Temple.
That's Temple
good
of Doom.
stuff. But
Well,
Let's
the
call
So
him
there's
off.
many things.
Let's
Well,
call
I
him
mean,
off.
Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, written by the writer of Jurassic Park, the movie.
well, and Okay,
Stupid
what else?
alien
Oh,
pygmy
okay,
monkeys.
so that's all as that. But now we get to go to the gooey gooey stuff.
Gooey
meaning
gooey?
Ultimate
the
fate.
ultimate fate. So after Nettles'
Fatality.
death, Applewhite basically broke down, and for a couple years he had no clue what to do, where to go with his movement, and it took a while before he finally reformed everything and basically started pointing everything towards a imminent evacuation, and that would happen with the Hale-Bopp comet.
Now,
And that-
he actually did start trying to build something that would resemble
Yeah.
a type of a spaceship.
Yeah, he thought that he could make one, and then
Yeah.
he realized it was beyond his ability.
Right.
So,
So, for those of you that are Simpsons fans, this is pretty much the cult that was spoofed.
Oh
Yeah.
one of the episodes.
Absolutely.
Big time.
yep,
Pretty sure The Simpsons is just a cult by itself.
It is.
yeah.
Actually,
Groening's
They
actually
can,
there is
they
a
can tell the future.
actually there is a Christian religion based around Ned Flanders in the UK.
Lovely.
That's just scary.
It's straight up all about good works and good deeds.
We know
so-
you're not a member, otherwise you would have said love diddly ugly.
Eat my shorts.
Ah, the Bart Simpson cult.
That's a Satanist.
He's a Luciferian.
Luciferian.
Okay, Miss Katie, let's.
So
What
now
else do
we
we know?
have a
Give me the ooey gooey.
now we have a pretty much a timeline countdown.
right.
So first we start with March 19th and 20th of 1997.
Okay.
Applewhite started to create tapes that talked about the final evacuation
Right.
and how everyone had to be on the ship or they would be doomed.
Have you watched those tapes?
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
He is so interesting to watch.
He is. He's so animated in his face.
And how-
It's just
and-
it almost makes you want to believe what he's saying. Because
Yes.
he
He's
has
so
such
sincere.
He's got such a belief in what he is saying that it just, I mean,
Yeah.
Not
Makes
to,
you want to believe
But
it.
how charismatic are the mannerisms? I mean, anybody
He is
can
very
go on there and
reserved.
talk about how believable things can be, but you got to have that.
He has
he's not
that
your
sense
he's not
of-
your typical like self-help cult leader
Right,
kind of guy.
right.
He's very mild-mannered, but his face and his eyes have this expression of total and utter belief in what is
It
coming
is
out of his mouth.
it's a charisma not in words
Okay,
or personality, but in simple look.
gotcha. Okay,
Yeah. So just seeing him being in
because
his
I haven't
presence.
seen those tapes.
Okay.
You need to.
You need to.
You
it's
need
worth
to.
it. Yeah. So he began to make the tapes and talk about mass suicide as the only way to leave Earth.
No, it's not suicide. Everybody else is suicide.
Right.
This is mass
evacuation.
Right. That,
transgression.
that's just what the article was talking
Can
about.
hop
is that-
on
I mean,
this
come on,
spacey
they're going
shit.
after Elvis.
they
He
were
left, he
calling
went
it.
home.
They were calling it their final evacuation.
Yeah.
So
Final countdown.
no, they actually did have a countdown though.
Yeah.
For all their people, they actually had people in the field whenever they finally decided to ascend.
years and counting.
And so what? They were just supposed to take care of the dead bodies?
No, they were told to. They didn't put much.
There would be no dead
thought
bodies
into
because they
them.
would have risen in the
Yeah,
ship.
they didn't think there would be dead bodies. The people that were left behind that were still in the religion and still are, actually, they believed that there will be another exit point, an evacuation point, before the final destruction of
Yep.
Earth.
Shocker.
They're looking for the next wormhole.
They missed
They missed the boat.
The first bus, but bus number 2.
That'll come around in another
Right.
1,000
That's
years.
the short bus.
They're bringing the Delta Flyer in.
Oh, okay.
And actually, several people right after the several people in the group right after the initial mass suicide actually also one attempted to commit suicide. He shot himself in the head multiple times and still didn't die.
Poor guy.
So
Was he
tried really hard.
related to Rasputin?
maybe.
Rasputin didn't want to die either.
Did he not know what part of his body his head was?
I guess not. So now
Ow!
Talk about a migraine.
That must not be a head.
That's your knee, sir.
So we've talked about that there is a mass suicide in March 26th of 1997.
Right.
And this is not in Texas. They've moved.
No,
yeah,
it
they
was
had moved
in
away.
California. I think.
They have moved to San Diego, California at this point.
Why does everybody go to California to die? I'm
I
just
have no
saying,
idea.
Nevada
Well,
has
actually-
a lot of desert.
Actually, they believed that
Everybody always talks about the weather and oranges.
Maybe
Well, they,
citrus makes them crazy. Maybe that's it.
Or they just want a lot of
I'm
citrus.
pretty
the
sure
West
Yeah.
Coast
I'm
actually was
pretty sure
supposed to
Paul's
have
about
a.
to get hit in the face with that microphone.
Yeah.
The West Coast was supposed to have a better visual on Hale-Bopp Comet, which would make the transition easier. That was the idea.
Have they not heard of smog?
Well,
Well, not in San
They're
Diego.
being
That's in LA.
transported. Smog doesn't affect anything.
Go through it to get to it. I'm just saying.
Another
you're sent-
small
You might hit a
tidbit-
bird.
Another small tidbit about them is that before they did their ascension, they actually all went, and I do a lot of reading and I watch a lot of. They actually went to a Marie Callender's close to there.
They did.
They ate all the same thing in all the same way. They didn't speak, and they didn't speak to the waiter or any of that stuff. I mean, that right there. I mean, you're fixing to ascend. It was me. I'm sorry. We're fixing to ascend to the heavens, but we got to eat a pot pie first.
That's right. Gotta have pot pie.
And have that last meal.
Right.
It could be that chicken parm. They have some excellent chicken parm.
Yeah.
No, they just said it was just
But
basic.
they are the great tart people, so yes, it probably was the blandest pot pie you could get.
Yeah, and it was like
They had great togas. Might as
They
well have
all
bland pot pies.
ate the same way. They didn't speak at dinner. They all ate the same. They chewed the same number of times. They ate the same at the same time, which is
Synchronized
Can you
eating.
imagine?
I know what it was. They ate beef tips.
Probably.
Yeah.
That was an
So,
Olympic sport,
but
I'd
can
win.
you imagine being a waiter and having this group of
39
people sitting at this table doing exactly the same thing? They all had water. They all.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine this poor waiter going, "What is going on?"
Right.
Am I being punked here?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
Right.
Are the cameras being
Well,
hidden?
Well, we know they didn't read
It was an
Douglas
easy
Adams.
order for him to carry out.
Right.
It's like, I got 39 orders. Oh, all right. What do they want? Beef tips. All of them.
Same thing. Every one of them.
And mashed
water.
potatoes. Make sure they're all equal.
Make sure you use no salt. They do not like flavor.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
honestly, they didn't care at that point because they were all going to kill themselves over the next 3 days.
I'm sorry, but if I know I'm going to kill myself, I'm going out with like a bottle of vodka.
Well, they didn't
my
believe-
favorite
But the
food.
they
body
were
is
going.
going with
They
them.
were complete ascetics. They
Because
didn't
when-
believe
I'm
in
just saying,
indulgence.
I'm
don't
not
want to get
coming back.
nauseous whenever you go up into space.
I'm not going to be coherent with that much vodka. You're not understanding here.
That actually played a part in the final episode where they finally did commit suicide.
Yes.
They were found on March 26th of 1997, 38 members and Applewhite, in the rented mansion. But when they were found, it had been several days and many had started to decompose. And
Ooh, that's gotta smell quite right.
Actually, there were police officers that came in to look at the scene and stuff who were vomiting.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was really bad. So
I'd imagine.
each member was found having taken phenobarbital
Woohoo! Sleepy time drug.
mixed with applesauce. So they ate it physically.
Yum.
And so then they washed it down with vodka.
But the important part about that is that while they were in the cult before they did this, no alcohol was
Right.
allowed. It
Right.
was a worldly thing. They were
Right.
not allowed to drink any
Like
sort of
I
alcohol.
said, you're going
Right.
out with a bang.
Right. So
Might as well have
so
a
they
shot.
washed it down with alcohol, and then they were helped. They started to pass out, right? So someone would help them secure plastic bags over their head to help induce asphyxiation.
Yeah.
Because the
Oh,
phenobarbital
yeah,
would help
because-
them ease into a slumber, and then the bag would suffocate them.
But with such a belief in going into space and joining other aliens and stuff, you'd have thought that somewhere, Douglas Adams would have played a part, and there'd have been 42 people at the table, since
Right.
that is the
Right.
answer to life, universe, and
They
everything.
only needed like 3 more people.
Yeah, I know, right?
The ones in the field.
Right there, you
But
go.
I
That
could
was
see
them.
that actually playing a
mean-
part in it, because that is a very big story about aliens. And,
Well, and everything they did was very was laden with meaning.
Yeah.
And we know what some of it meant, but we don't know what all of it meant. And
Do
we
we
probably
wanna
will
know?
never know.
I don't think
I
we
don't know.
do.
I mean,
Maybe not.
so they also had, after they died and someone had taken the plastic bag off their head, a purple cloth was laid over their head and abdomen. It was a large purple cloth. So then they found on each person a $5 bill and 3 quarters. The $5 bill was to cover vagrancy fines for their bodies after they left.
Oh, well.
And 3 quarters to pay for phone calls to family and friends after they got aboard
Well,
the
help
ship.
out
each
They
person
should-
only had
How
three
thoughtful.
family members.
Wait.
Yeah, you know.
It was to let their families know they were okay, that they'd made it to the ship.
But they
Okay.
were in California, and I hate to tell you this, but a phone call in California back then was 50 cents.
Oh, I know.
So you
They're
only
a
got
little-
like one phone call.
Think about it. They're a little out of touch at this point. Like
Yeah.
Little.
So they were each dressed in identical black shirts and sweatpants, and with brand new black and white Nike Decades athletic shoes.
Black Nikes with the white swoosh.
I'm just
and
saying.
white laces.
This is just
So you know.
I think Krista wanted a pair of those.
So they were dressed like a retirement community.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
On their arm was an armband, like I said before, that said Heaven's Gate away team to specifically salute to Roddenberry.
Yeah.
Because that kind of fueled their idea of utopia on a different planet. So
Okay, please, if you're a Star Trek person, do not do this shit.
Well, and
You ruin it for the rest of us.
And
I'm
they-
just saying.
and they all
And keep Douglas Adams the hell out of it, too.
they all made recordings for family
Right.
members.
They
And
did.
there were several that apparently Star Trek was their thing, and several of them made Star Trek references in their goodbyes to their families.
I actually watched it was a 10 episode podcast series about Heaven's Gate specifically.
Really?
Yes, it's fantastic. And when they get to the end, they're talking the whole time. They're talking to the families of the victims and how what they experienced.
Right.
And at the end, they like start talking about this one woman who you've been talking to the whole time, and she's watching a video of a woman laughing with her friends and joking around and enjoying life. This is Christmas of 1996. And, right? Yeah, 1996. And, which is the Christmas before they killed themselves in
Right.
March. And she said it is the only solace she has that she's had, that she believed her daughter was loved and that it had experienced goodness in her life, even
Right.
if it wasn't with her, that she had been loved. And that was the only way she could find solace. And she watched it every Christmas. And, it's heart-wrenching to
Yeah,
think about
oh,
it. Like, it's because they did all make recordings, and that woman actually was talking about, I don't care that I'm leaving the earth, I'm going to a better place, and was a lot of them were very resentful to their earth families, and their desire to bring them out of what they loved. You know, that they really hated them for doing that. So that was a big deal. So, yeah, they actually did the deaths over 3 days. And they had groups of 15, 7, and 6. I don't remember exactly, but the first group was 15.
So it was what, 39 with
Doe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they started with the first group that were the younger recruits. And the older guys, like, shepherded them through it and were there for them, and then they did it with the next group, and then they did it with the final group, and with the final group they finished the first 4, and then there was Doe and then 2 followers, and Doe actually didn't use the poison. He had a revolver and shot himself in the left temple and was found laying very peacefully on a pillow between 2 of the other followers who had died by the poison.
You notice that most of these followings, it's poison. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, if we're gonna go
It's
out,
kind of more peaceful.
Well, it's-
do it
I
a little.
guess.
It's not peaceful.
It's easier for
But
us.
see,
Your insides are
you have to
corroded
think about
and you're
it.
convulsing and throwing up.
It
That
takes
is
a lot
not.
longer.
Well,
But
this one
you
was
have to think about
kinda
what
like
can
a
I do the most
sunburn.
damage with
the fastest.
the
How
fastest
many people can I kill
at one time.
at one time? The whole thing is
I
about
can't
numbers.
take a gun and shoot each person and have everybody die at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd have to provide a lot of ammo.
Exactly.
Yep.
It's too much.
Where
We're gonna
I
say
could
that for
put
the
poison in
electricity.
everybody's cup and we're all dead.
Yeah. You have a big punch bowl of cyanide.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Going back to the previous one, just a moment. If I remember right, weren't all of the Jonestown 900 found with cloths over them as well?
No, they were
they were
not.
just laying open.
Hello?
They were spread out all over the encampment, and
Like, if
some
you-
of
I
them
had
were
thought
faces.
that I
They're just
saw
spread
news
out.
footage where they
Willy-nilly
walked in, they were just
everywhere.
all in rows.
No.
No, they were all
That was
over
in
the
groups
place.
of people who died together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
they would huddle together.
Yep.
Okay, because I thought I guess it was after they had found them and they covered them,
Right.
and then the news
Yes,
crew
right.
came in and got okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what scared you the most about this cult?
Heaven's
What gets
Gate.
under your skin? Mm-hmm. Creeps you out.
About this one?
This one specifically,
This
or
one's-
the other one?
This one specifically. Them. I can't decide whether they were worn down to the point like in Jonestown, but how they just decided one day that they were genderless and then they were going to follow this comet. And it amazes me how a TV show and science fiction can mold people into religious cults where they're going to be just taken away.
It's the seeker mentality that was created in the 60s and 70s with people being incredibly disillusioned with government and their churches, and they're looking for something to believe in.
I totally understand that, but what I guess gets under my skin is that in this particular one, in the Heaven's Gate, is they all decided they were genderless.
Yeah, well, that was Doe and T's that in order to be in a utopian society means you cannot have characteristics that are human because human is not of the next evolutionary level.
Right.
So they had to get rid of those things. And
you also
gender
have
was
to
one of them.
realize that during that time is where you start hearing about the first people that have claimed abduction.
Right.
And that they saw genderless, gray people.
Right. Well, I mean,
So-
I get, I wonder how one gets to the point where they decide they no longer want to be male or female. They do not want to be human. They want to be alien.
Well,
what does it take for a person to be put in that?
The hatred of humanity and
I
the
was about-
result of the way
And
of
now
the
we're a
world.
classroom. Look.
Yeah,
Oh my, we have hands raised and
I know.
everything.
Classroom.
I joined a cult. So
Yes. That's why you are our leader on this, Missy.
I joined a cult. I was raised in a different cult. So, yeah, I know cults. But, so the idea of this is like people become they're taught to become so bogged down in their spirituality and who that makes them and feeling and experiencing whatever the deity or the beliefs or anything like that will do for them. And whenever they're searching and all they want is to find that thing that fills that hole, and if they find something that sounds like all of the good things they'd heard of and it adds in science, then suddenly they believe they found a winner. So they'll do
That's the
anything to
problem.
stay part of it.
It's
Yeah,
that
and,
one part of them that they're trying to
going
fill
back
that
to like
hole.
the molding of the minds. There's this episode in this TV show. It's called Brickleberry, and yes, it's very easy to get to, and you can. And there's this episode that sounds very like this cult. It's about this girl who comes into this town and just joins this cult, and they all join a spaceship, and they believe that they're going to go and just be in a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
And since it's so easy to get to, it can mold young minds saying, "Hey, look,
but
I
really-
can go to a better place than this."
Yeah.
But I guess my issue is not so much how they get to that point, but whenever you hear these religions, they always talk about the positives of what's going to happen with it. There's not the only
There's no
negative is you're going to be
negatives.
left behind.
Luciferians.
Yeah, well, but you
Yeah.
see what I mean? Like
Gonna be some epic space battles.
I feel like in these things is that everybody wants the good,
Right.
You know.
Well, that's
And
why they do everything they're told to do to
Right.
keep the good.
Right.
But there's also this like hole in every part of this that says, wait a minute, this can't be right. You know, I mean, there's got to be some part of their brain that says, wait a minute,
But
what
most
am I
people,
doing?
they
Why
don't-
am I...
They don't want to question. They don't want to. They just want to fill the hole and feel whole.
They hear the
So-
good parts
And
about it.
you've
and
got
they just,
some-
Quote Patrick Bateman, I just want to fit in.
Yeah. You've got you got some where specifically this one I could see where it's targeted kind of towards more that are having those. I'm about to lose my job, or I'm not making enough. I'm gonna lose my house. I'm gonna lose this. I'm gonna lose that.
Especially in the
this is my
1960s
answer.
and 70s. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess maybe my issue is that I don't feel like I have that void.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not searching because my life life is not always great.
Right.
It's just part of life.
What-
I guess
It
because
really
I
is
have
a-
the coping mechanisms, and I think these people don't.
Well, it's really a it comes from your background. Like
Right.
those people that are unfulfilled as children go into adulthood searching for that thing, and so whenever they find something that seems like it'll fit, they launch themselves into it. And especially in the 70s, like this was a big deal for
Right.
them
Yeah.
because like there were so many people who they got college degrees, but there was nothing to do with them afterwards because the job market was awful.
Right.
Yeah.
So these people who had this idea that they wanted more and that they weren't getting more because they couldn't support themselves, but they also wanted something more spiritually, and they happened upon this movement.
And you can also see where it comes into play of there's going to be so much better there why you have to leave the earthly stuff is because also around some of that time you've got the gas wars. Oh, we're losing fossil fuels. The earth's
Right.
going to die. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that could play into this on top of the fact that, you know, maybe you're about to lose your house and your car's been repoed and
Right.
my job's not paying enough. And
All right, Paul.
Yes, sir. He's had his hand up for a while.
Yes.
Yeah, and Chris also had hers up, so...
I'm sorry.
Well, with this one, it's interesting that I really hate to do this because I am a Christian, but I kind of have to point a similarity to all religions and other cults with this because this one's very explicit. There's a big degree of self-loathing in this.
Right.
Like, you get to the idea of being genderless and, you know, evolving to the next state and everything like that, getting rid of everything that makes you a human being. This comes from having a crap life. This comes from having suspicion about the human experience, suspicion about your friends, your family, the world around you. You want to elevate yourself above it because you see it as all just beneath you. So,
Okay.
like... And that
Right.
and that makes you really easy to just conform. Like that makes you incredibly easy to just get into a charismatic mindset. Have a leader that tells you, "I've got the answers. We're going to get past this. We're going to get out of all this, and you're going to be onto in the next world, and it's going to be a lot better."
Right.
Right.
Chris, what were you saying? You were thinking a minute ago.
I think Katie.
Did I say it?
I think you.
Ah, sorry.
She stole it from her.
Yeah.
But yeah, cults.
Yeah. So these are just two, and probably the most well known in the United States.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So-
We have three more on the international scene.
which will flow into next show.
Yep.
Yes.
And after that, we will be talking about cults in our own backyard because Texas breeds some doozies of its own,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
including
Oh, yeah.
some that we actually have weird connections to.
Yeah.
Right. So catch us again next week for our next installment of cults and moving into different ones and different areas that move into more closer to our time period. I think one of them does, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
If you have anything you would like to add to our show, we will talk about it next week. And you can do that by going over to our website, fearcentral.net. And there's a multitude of things you can do there. You can get access to all of our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, and what have you. And you can also subscribe to the show through there as well, which for everyone, we are now on Spotify.
How about that?
So,
How you like us now?
right? So you can go through there. You can listen to the show directly on the website, but if you're someone that travels and you listen to it in your car, whatever, you can go to the link of your preferred listening choice, whether it be iTunes or Google or Spreaker or Spotify or whatever, and subscribe to us there. Don't forget to leave us a rating and review. And probably looking at maybe here soon doing a listener of the week based on reviews.
Okay.
So if you want to leave the review, we can do a shout out for you. And maybe even work it to where you can join us on the show as a call-in.
That'd be great.
That could be exciting. But don't forget to check us out next week as we continue our discussion on cults. And we hope y'all have a great rest of the week. And as always,
stay scared.
Fear Central is a product of Thoughtbox Studios. For more information, visit thoughtboxstudios.com.